Hello, and welcome to an all-new episode of Press YYZ, your favorite Canadian gaming podcast. You can catch the show weekly on youtube.com/PressYYZ, live on twitch.tv/PressYYZ, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or on your own time on your podcast service of choice. Before we get started, as a reminder that we here at Press YYZ stand against discrimination of any kind. And while we appreciate however you choose to give back to our show, there's no better way to support us than being excellent to each other. So we're back for another show this week. I'd like to introduce my cast this week. This week we've got Kozi. Kozi's running the numbers again. How are you doing, Kozi?
I'm doing pretty good. I got a haircut, and it certainly is an experience getting one of those after more than like 7 or 8 months or whatever.
Which one did you get cut?
That hair.
Which hair?
The top hair, the hair on top of your scalp.
The one hair on the top.
Yes.
The one hair on the. Okay. Now I follow. Got it.
Okay. Well, and that's AJ, the fully vaccinated one. How are you doing, AJ? How are you feeling?
Give me two more weeks to cook in the oven, and I'll be fully appropriately vaxxed, if you will.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Fucking finally.
So, yeah, I'm hopefully, I don't know, we'll see. Hopefully we'll be able to push ours up. London is not a hot spot, so they are not fast tracking vaccines here yet. But I'm hoping with the progress that we're making that we'll be able to get them sooner than later. Okay, cool. So, guys, let's do a bit of housekeeping here first. Now, I am a dummy and initially tweeted that I would be doing Mario Golf tomorrow night, but as I've realized, tomorrow night is actually Canada Day. So, we're once again going to move my stream to Friday. I feel like I've done that for quite a few weeks in a row, and I'm hoping to get back to normal Thursdays next week. That being said, if you do want to play Mario Golf with me, I'd love to play with you. I'm pretty solid at it, and I'd love some good competition. Let me know, and we can set up to play on Friday. Kozi, you're streaming Monday, I take it? Do you have any ideas of what you're streaming?
Yeah, I'm not certain what I'm going to be streaming on Monday on account of me having very mixed feelings on what I streamed last Monday, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Ooh, okay. Well, a transition. All right. Well, with that being said, then, let's transition into what you were playing this week, Kozi.
Yeah. So this past Monday, I decided, you know what? On last week's episode of Press YYZ, we talked a lot about the Nintendo 64. We talked a lot about the console's, great library of games. And I was like, it's real weird that I never played Donkey Kong 64, considering that, I was such a huge stan for the original Donkey Kong Country trilogy on the SNES. And so Sunday night, the night before, I downloaded Donkey Kong 64 on my Wii U. And Monday night, I played that game for 2 hours and some, and I really don't know how I feel about this game, you guys. I think that Donkey Kong 64 has a lot of good stuff going for it. Obviously, graphically, the game does not hold up quite as well as some of its kin, but it's still very kind of lush and cartoonish. A lot of Kong's animations, while again not really holding a candle to the animations of games of today, still feel very kind of punchy and I think appropriate for his character. I was trying to think like what's another good thing about this game that I can state right up front, and nothing came to mind, unfortunately. I mean, look, the game is not a bad game, but it is it's a Nintendo 64 era platforming game that has a crap ton of collectibles and some real annoying platforming segments. I will say, to say another positive thing about the game, thus far, it's not been overly difficult to make my way through it. Each level of the game is quite maze-like, but despite that, I was able to figure out how to get to the first boss of the game, beat it, and kind of move on to the second area. But it's just, I don't know, guys. I don't know.
Well, Donkey Kong 64 is one of those games. I remember playing this back in the day that just it didn't feel, especially compared to what Rare had been doing, it didn't feel like the product they were used to putting out. Banjo was before this, right?
Yeah.
This
like
came after Banjo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was in between the two Banjo games. Then Conquer
Yeah.
was their last game
Yeah, that sounds
on the
right.
N64.
That sounds right.
Yeah, and I think they went too hard on the collectibles after the success of Banjo. Because they're like, oh, this is a formula that's working, and that allowed them to. Well, I haven't played Banjo 2. I know it's still well thought of. Maybe rein that back in, because this seems to be the black sheep of the N64 Rare games. In a lot of ways, considering it's a Nintendo property.
Well, and that's what's really weird is because I look back on my time with that game when it first came out incredibly fondly, but that could be partially because it was also the second N64 that I got in that sweet jungle see-through green that things were, and it came with the game in that yellow cartridge. It was just there was something special about it back then, but it's really surprising kind of to see that they could fumble it.
It's again, it's by the standards of its era, certainly not a bad game. It's just there are a bunch of little things that kind of irk me. Well, one thing that irks me is that so relatively early on in the game, you get Donkey Kong's coconut gun. Control scheme
it fires in spurts.
Yeah,
and if he shoots you, it's gonna hurt.
Hell yeah. Which I was really happy. I'd completely somehow forgotten about the DK64 wrap, and I was really happy to see that at the beginning of the game. So yeah, DK has his coconut gun. It's pretty powerful and pretty punchy. Shortly after getting DK's coconut gun, you gain access to Diddy Kong, and you gain access to Diddy Kong's peanut pop guns. And I was like, okay, cool. Another, set of firearms that are probably going to function pretty differently. But in my experience, and I want to stress that I've not really put the mechanics of the game to their limit, but the peanut pop gun struck me as being incredibly similar to DK's coconut gun, to the point that they basically just felt like the exact same weapon. And it's like, well, I mean, why even give DK this weapon to begin with? Well,
because everything back then had to have a gun, right?
Yeah, it's this really weird thing where it's like, we talk about how there are, so many collectibles in the game. There are yellow bananas for Kong. There are red bananas for Diddy Kong. But then also each character has moves that are incredibly analogous to each other, to the point of being almost exactly the same as well. And it's like, you could have just consolidated all of this into one character, or maybe two really different characters, but yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, AJ. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I'm reminded of. Go figure. It's me here. There was a giant bomb feature back in the day called "Steal My Sunshine," and it happened a couple years ago at this point. And they what they did is they played Super Mario Sunshine, and they would place these bets with this gumball machine that they had, and you would twist the crank and whatever, and if a certain color of gumball came out, you would have to do things in this pass the controller kind of feature. They tried to do it again with DK64, but were just decided in the middle of it they were done, and they put they instead of Steal My Sunshine, they called it Burgle My Bananas, which is a great name first and foremost. But
amazing name.
Yeah, and they had this if you got whatever the big collectible is or whatever, you got to buy something from the Funky Shop, Funky Kong's shop.
Yeah.
And it would be a power up for you, the human, to use on against another player while they're playing or something like that. And one of them was just swap out to Super Mario 64 and play that instead. And then they did that, and that was like the last episode of Burgle My Bananas, because they just never went back after that.
Speaking of Funky Kong, so it's funny, over the course of this conversation, I'm finding all sorts of little things here and there about DK64, which I actually do genuinely like and think are great about the game. One thing I appreciate about DK64 is that there are a lot of returning characters from prior entries in the series, both allies and enemies, some which are noticeably absent, like Dixie Kong from DK2, for example. But outside of her, lots of returning characters, including Funky Kong. However, Funky Kong in his prior iterations was a funky dude. He was a surfer / mechanic that was, chilling on those positive vibes, so to speak. But in this
funky mode,
in this game, he's like, he joined the military, it would seem. Like, is this just like the natural road that you head down when you are a surfer that turns into a mechanic? Because I don't know how I feel about it.
I have no idea about the ins and outs of the deep and storied lore of the Donkey Kong universe.
I guess the question is do you want to create a new character to fill that role, or do you want to have somebody come back and fill that role? And if so, do you modify their personality to fill that role?
Honestly, I think I'm more content with having an existing character fill that role, as weird as it might feel. I feel like, see, the problem, right, is that Rare never made another Donkey Kong game after Donkey Kong 64.
Yeah.
Or did they do some ports? I mean, like, ports aside, like, they never made like another mainline, unique Donkey Kong entry. And I feel like there could have been a great opportunity with said successor to kind of like address Funky Kong's weird evolution, but they never did. Last good thing, though, that I'll say about Donkey Kong 64 that came to mind over the course of this conversation is that, like I talked about earlier, I was able to get through the first section of the game in about 2 hours. The game doesn't seem, at least thus far, like it's going to be the longest game in the world. It seems like it's not trying to outsay its welcome if you're just trying to beeline it, which is more or less what I was trying to do. And so what I want to ask you guys is, do you think that I should stick with it? Do you think I should, hold out that I'll, find these, little sparks of hope and enjoyment like we've been talking about over the course of this conversation and see it through? Or do you think I should drop it and move on to greener jungles?
Give it one more try and just see how you feel about it.
Yeah.
Would be my suggestion.
I mean, everybody's allowed to have their opinion, and everybody's allowed to get tired of doing the same thing over and over again. Mm-hmm. That being said, when I was growing up, if I was full and I hadn't finished my plate yet, I wasn't made to finish the whole plate. Mm-hmm. But I had to take at least one more big bite before I finished, just to make sure. So if you take one more bite of this game, you're just gonna throw it up all over the place, don't bother. But if you think you could get one more mouthful out in there and just find something flavorful of value, then I say give it one more shot. Hell, even if it's for half an hour of your next stream and you're just like, nah, you know what? Crack this controller in half. Let's drop back into the tech, baby. Whatever you want.
Hell yeah. I would love to see a Kozi rage quit midstream. I think that could be entertaining.
I came very close to rage quitting at the end of my last DK64 stream because I was trying to cross a very narrow passageway as Diddy Kong, and the game was just not allowing me to do so. So you might actually very well get your wish, Nathan. I don't know whether I'm going to stream it or not this upcoming Monday, but I do think I am going to give it at least one more shot. I think you guys convinced me.
Just think about the Twitch clips that you could get out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Not that we should do it for the clips, but I'm just saying if it does happen and you have a rage quit, it would probably be amusing. That's all I'm saying.
Isn't that a Limp Bizkit song? Do it for the Clippy.
Oh, I wish. Oh man, Significant Other Y'all is a great album.
Okay.
I just want to put that out there.
Okay.
Or no, it's just Significant Other. It's $2 Bill Y'all is their first album. I know that album like every single word.
Oh yeah.
That was big when I was a kid.
For better or worse.
For better, always for better.
Okay.
Okay, so we've talked about Donkey Kong 64. Kozi, we'll come back in a few minutes to talk about a few other things. AJ, why don't you tell me you were playing the Halo Master Chief Collection last week? It looks like that's continued this week.
That's continued. It's been absolute comfort food for me in the last week or so. In anticipation of getting the second vaccine and whatnot. I needed something good to unwind with. But yeah, Halo remains a constant good thing in my life, and I will say the Flood are not good things. The Flood are obnoxious. I hate them. Something I'm discovering. So I'm playing through. When I'm playing by myself, I'm playing through Halo 1 currently.
Yep.
And I just finished the library, and now I'm trying to kind of like destroy the reactors and stuff and escape. And I just got back to the ship where I know, spoilers, they're gonna find keys again. Yeah, go ahead, Kozi, do it.
What?
Yeah. I was gonna say do the spoiler thing. Spoilers.
Oh, got it. Yeah, it's been a couple episodes since we've activated the spoiler thing, Bob. Sorry about that.
Yeah. There you go. No,
I love that.
Yeah, it's a really good feature we have here. No, I'm just about to get to the part where keys, where you find keys again, and there's like a whole section of this game that I just completely forgot existed. And it's the part like after the teleporting onto the ship where Chief is accidentally upside down because that's just the coordinates that Cortana put in, and it was supposed to be this way, and he falls to the ground. A good slapstick humor, knee slapper. It's the part right after that where you drop into the valley. I've completely blanked that whole part out from my memory, possibly because as a kid, like I played through it once or twice as a kid and as a teenager, but only up to usually when I would get the urge to start again, I would only play up to I'm blanking on the beach level.
I know what you're referring to, though.
It's the fourth level.
Yeah, the silent cartographer.
Yeah. Silent cartographer.
I don't know how I pulled that out of myself.
It's regardless. Yeah, I would usually only play up to that point, or I would play the final mission where you're doing the escape from the Maw, if you will. And that one's also really good because you're driving that friggin' warthog until you escape as best you can, and
or you don't, and you have to redo it over the course of 5 minutes.
times.
Yeah,
of course. I mean that was the case even back then.
Can I ask you a question, AJ? When you play that section of the game, the mod, do you just drive by the interpass where you're supposed to wait for that one lady to pick you up because you know that she's not going to be able to?
No, as somebody who really likes and appreciates the story of Halo in general, I definitely sit there and wait for her to fly over Foehammer, and she doesn't make it, obviously, but I just appreciate the story of the game in such a way. I like to be immersed in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So
For those who are curious, again, deep Halo spoilers, but we are in spoiler mode at this point, so you should probably know that. There's this part at the very end of the final level of Halo Combat Evolved where you briefly stop the Warthog that you're inside of so that you can be picked up by Foehammer, or so you believe, because Foehammer gets basically gunned down and dies, and you can at that point continue onwards because Cortana indicates, hey, we found this other ship that you can get into that will allow you to escape the Halo ring before things go bazook. But you can actually just skid through that entire section of the game, because whether the sort of pseudo cutscene plays out where Foehammer dies or not, you can still continue going forward. And I salute you, AJ, for doing that, but I did not do that after the second attempt.
Yeah, I mean, if I were playing on Legendary or something like that, I'd be trying to get through as fast as I can just so I can make it. But I'm just playing it on normal because I want to enjoy my time as well as can be. And I'm gonna eventually continue on to the second one. But I've also been playing some of the Halo multiplayer with a couple of friends. High school friends, and that was what we used to do, play the Halo multiplayer, and that's been a good time in itself. Very cathartic, very, very nice to get back to. I really hope they do a test flight of Halo Infinite soon so I can play the absolute shit out of it.
Did they say when the beta was coming? Has that been announced?
What they announced was that you could sign up for these betas.
Okay.
And you could sign up for them, and they would notify you when they're going to be available. And if you sign up for the PC one, which you can just sign up for all of it all at once, you have to kind of put in your PC specs. You have to go to a certain thing.
Website and fill it out.
No, you have to go to a certain command prompt in your PC and run something that generates a text file so they can just get a feel for your specs specifically. But I should probably do that for my laptop too, just to see. Because then maybe I could just download it. I don't know. But yeah, hopefully they do that. Something I remembered while I was playing the multiplayer of Halo. We had this. Me and a friend had a good battle on Halo Reach map, and I didn't play a lot of Reach multiplayer because I absolutely burnt myself out summer before on the Halo Reach beta. When Halo Reach originally came out, finally in I think it was September of 2010. Played the shit out of the story, and then I played a little bit of multiplayer, and then I just kind of never went back to it. But I guess it's one of the risks you run when you put a part of the reason there's not a lot of demos these days is because people were actually trying the game and realizing,
this isn't for me.
This isn't for me, rather than just buying it, right? And then that's sort of bit them in the ass, but it was super consumer friendly. Halo multiplayer and Halo Reach multiplayer was absolutely for me. I just burned out on it before the game even came out because of that. Yep.
All right.
So that's Halo. Again.
Okay. Well, hey, Halo's exciting. At some point, I need to play it. I don't know when I'm going to do that because I keep finding other things to play. But
even if you just play it on easy. Just to kind of get through the story, by all means.
Okay.
It's an absolutely valid way to play it. Nobody's going to tell you otherwise.
Okay. Kozi, let's jump back over to you as you've been playing a different type of Spartan, a little Astrobot virtual Spartan. Tell me about Astrobot's rescue mission.
It's an interesting way to describe Astrobot. I don't know that I would describe Astrobot as a Spartan. Or wait a minute, his name is Astro, right? Do we know that his last name is Bot, or is it just Astro?
I think it's just Astro.
That sounds
What
right.
were the names of those things when they were just in the Playroom on PS4 when it launched?
I mean, they were probably
It's
just
just called PS4 Playroom.
Yeah, I know.
Does the bot specifically refer to the fact that it's kind of humanoid looking? That makes it a bot, like a robot?
Oh, maybe.
Because in the Playroom, it was just a floaty head thing, right?
Yes. No. There were lots of little guys
Okay.
in the Playroom.
Yeah.
No, they were the same. I'm just trying to remember now.
Anyways, Astrobot Rescue Mission. So here's the deal, guys. I got my hands on a PlayStation VR unit back in, I want to say, like 2018. It's been a minute. And right from the get-go, while I was excited to play all manner of PlayStation VR games, it was pretty obvious that, oh man, this VR unit is a little bit cumbersome to set up. There are a lot of wires, there are a lot of boxes that you have to stick into various things. And while there are some pretty quality experiences for the console, like Beat Saber, which was an early PlayStation VR game that I played a lot of back in the day, the quality of resolution of the screen is not as perfect as it is, and if you're wearing glasses, you have to do even more adjusting than you normally do when you put it on. And it's for that reason that at the beginning of 2020, I kind of just sort of let go of the PlayStation VR unit I had and didn't really go back to it. I briefly consulted my PSN profile a second ago, and I believe that I last played the game that I just mentioned, Firewall 0 Hour. Did I just mention that, or did I imagine that I just mentioned that?
I think you imagined that you mentioned it. I don't remember saying it.
Thank you for keeping me sane. The last PSVR game that I played, according to PSN profiles, was Firewall 0 Hour, and that was in February of 2020. So my PSVR unit's been collecting dust for a little while now, and I'd always meant to kind of come back to it because back when I had the console and was using it actively, I went ahead and purchased Moss and Astrobot Rescue Mission and the other like classic PlayStation VR titles.
Seminal ones.
Yeah, or obtain them via PlayStation Plus or other promotions or whatnot. And as a result of me slightly reworking my work slash study space, it's been easier for me to basically set up my PlayStation VR and allow myself to be in a more relaxed position when using it. And so I decided on a lark this past week to start playing Astrobot Rescue Mission, and lo and behold, it's a really, really great-ass game. I believe, Nathan, you had talked about this game on the podcast in the past about how much you enjoyed it. And yeah, it really does live up to the hype. This is like just such a superbly designed platformer with so much sort of great personality, and it does the Mario thing where every single level there's some sort of like new mechanic or new gimmick or new thingamabob that makes it feel oh so different from the rest, even when there are certain things that are being like repeated and reused here and there.
They find new ways to use it, which is really neat. Astrobot's one of those really special games. I think it showed what VR can actually do. To me, it's like the Mario 64 VR. And there's very few VR games which I think have been able to meet this. Because I think when we thought of VR, we just thought first-person like shooters and like first-person games in VR. And nobody had really considered platformers.
Did you ever try Moss?
Have I played Moss? Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one. It uses a good like storybook like perspective. Like the whole thing looks like a pop-out book.
Yeah, really. Moss is really good for that. Ghost Giant, another really good game. That's a smaller indie game, but it also has that pop-up book feel. And that game makes you feel things. Like it does some really interesting story. Has some really interesting story stuff with it. There's if you're willing to dive down the PSVR hole, I've got a few recommendations for you.
That's sure. Also. I do want to wrap up Astrobot Rescue Mission first of all. Definitely consult in you when that time comes.
I still highly recommend playing No Man's Sky that way. If you get the chance.
I've heard good things about it. Yep.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, it's a first person. It's a kind of a shootery thing, but you're more mining resources, and you're flying a ship. And what it does with even the move controllers on PSVR is
that was another factor in me not using PSVR as much, that you constantly had to keep a couple of PlayStation Move controllers constantly charged. Luckily, I was able to get 2 PS Move controllers before it became impossible to find them, and I had the means to recharge them, but like that was another factor.
Would I sound really sad if I had the original ones from the PlayStation 3 when they first launched?
Yes. What?
I mean, I'm pretty certain that both of my Move controllers are from that era as well.
You'll know whether they're micro or mini USB on the bottom. The newer ones got updated with mini or micro USB. The original ones had mini USB, which is that thicker charger.
Yeah, I'll have to check them out after the show. I will say, there are very few things that I've found myself criticizing as I was playing Astrobot Rescue Mission. I will say, unfortunately, I do get a little queasy from time to time playing the game, but obviously I would not really describe that as a fault of Astrobot Rescue Mission. I'd say that by and large, the game does a good job of making me feel relatively not queasy. That's really more of an issue of human anatomy, if anything.
It's a fault of your biology.
Yeah. The other thing that I will say, and this is not a criticism so much as it is something that I feel kind of weird about. So, last year, like everyone else, I played Astro's Playroom, the PlayStation 5, included game that basically takes you through a Astrobot-inspired adventure where you encounter all sorts of icons from throughout PlayStation history. And I remember really kind of loving that game at the time and kind of praising Team Asobi's, design acumens and overall visual style. And as a result, it's been really weird to kind of come back to Astrobot Rescue Mission and be like, oh man, like, so many things in Astro's Playroom were like lifted directly from Astrobot Rescue Mission, from the assets to the enemies to the way that Astro moves about his environment to even like a ton of the music. And like, I still think Astro's Playroom was a great pack-in PS5 game, but I feel like it almost kind of slightly lessens my appreciation of what that game did now, just knowing how much of it was based off of Rescue Mission.
See, I'm okay with that because not enough people played Rescue Mission to begin with.
Sure.
So for them to reuse those assets to like create something that was incredibly different for PlayStation still, and a packing game. There was no charge to it. I was fine with that.
Yeah.
So, and people heralded that game as the best pack-in since Wii Sports. Although, in theory, it might be the only pack-in since Wii Sports. But anyways.
Yeah. I mean, there is also...
You don't often get many pack-ins.
There was Welcome Park on the PlayStation Vita, if you remember.
Oh, that's true. I forgot about Welcome Park. Yes, that is a valid thing that happened. There was a platinum trophy in that, too.
There was a platinum? I thought it was just... There were trophies, but I don't remember there being a platinum.
Maybe it wasn't a platinum. By the way, I was looking earlier. Those bots are just called AR bots. According to
bots.
According to the Playroom Wikipedia, which is the original thing they appeared in.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I'm gonna take over for a little bit. Now, you talked about Donkey Kong earlier, Kozi, because you're a big Donkey Kong fan. Well, I got to play as Donkey Kong a little bit myself in the new Mario Golf Super Rush.
Ooh.
Actually, I played it on stream this week with our missing in action co-host Mitch George, as he's finally done his move, and fingers crossed will hopefully be coming back to the podcast soon. But yeah, no, we had a good time playing some Mario Golf. Now, I really like the game, but I have some criticisms of it as well. So it's your standard 3-click golf system where you click it once to set your power and then once to hit how your swing follow through is going to be. Actually, there isn't a third click in this one.
I don't think I've ever seen how Donkey Kong swings a golf club, and that's certainly a choice.
Yep.
I mean, it would make sense. He's such a strong ape. He'd probably be able to do it with just one hand like that, but it just looks weird.
Also, I think it's amazing how you had Donkey Kong queued up as the person I played as for this clip when I made the transition to Donkey Kong from Donkey Kong. So good on you. I didn't know that was going to happen. For the audio listeners, Donkey Kong is actually playing on the clip on the screen. It's a good golf game. It has a campaign mode, which is like maybe 5 or 6 hours that really just teaches you how to play golf. It's very, very shallow. You walk through different areas of this golf area in the Mushroom Kingdom, and kind of take on some quests and talk to trainers. And there's a whole lot of people around with word bubbles above them, but the honest truth is they don't mean anything. Like, they just have dialogue that's there, and it does not further or impact your story in any fashion. So the story mode's kind of like you get through it, you understand it, and then you have a pretty decent golfer that you can play the game with. So that's kind of what's there. But then the bulk of it is that you're going to be doing this golfing. Now you can do 2 modes, which is your regular, like just score based golf mode where it'll just take you to the next spot, or you can do what this is, and this is speed golfing, where you actually have to walk to the next to where your golf ball landed. So, and you can dash, and you got to conserve and get the hearts to speed up.
So on the subject of which, I'm watching your footage right now.
Yep.
Donkey Kong doesn't seem like he's dashing a whole lot, or is this his dash animation?
That's just his run. I don't know why I wasn't using the dash. So he does have a dash.
Because I was going to mention, like, Pauline and some of the other characters that you're competing against are, like, whizzing across the battlefield, and Donkey Kong, by comparison, seems like he's moving real slowly. And then, like, I don't know if that was a quirk of Donkey Kong's character, that he's very powerful, but also kind of lumbering, or if that was just something, I'll say, not really understanding about the game.
No, you can. He has a dash. Maybe I just didn't use it in the thing. I can't remember exactly which one it was. Like King Bob-omb, when he dashes, his little Bob-ombs come underneath of him and carry him and leave like Bob-ombs behind him, where you kind of like goes into the air. And I think it's a jetpack, or he's farting, one of the two. You never
He's
quite know.
Definitely farting. He's not smart enough to create a jetpack.
He's smart enough to steal one.
I mean, that's true. I don't know. AJ, do you think that is Wario farting, or is he using a jetpack to fly around the level?
I mean, considering in Smash Brothers Wario farts a lot,
Probably farting.
he's got to be ripping ass.
He's leaving stains on the
literally.
golf course.
Yeah.
Ooh, Jesus.
But yeah, we had a good time. TJ jumped in too. So here's my pitch on Mario Golf. It's a shallow game right now. It's 6 courses long. It's got 6 courses. There's a little bit of variation in them with weather, but not a huge amount. The adventure mode doesn't amount to a lot. There's in terms of unlockables, there isn't new characters to unlock, but you can unlock separate sets of clubs for them to use that are better, like by earning character points just by playing as each character. So it sets you up in a it seems like a very shallow experience. Now they've said they'll be supporting it with DLC. What that looks like, we don't know. It's going to be free DLC apparently, or free updates, I believe their words were during that direct. So and definitely there's a new Dock City course that will be added to the game. But in my mind right now, if you're looking at getting a golf game and you have a PlayStation, instead of Mario Golf at the moment, I'd maybe suggest investing your money in Everybody's Golf on the PlayStation 4. It just seems to be a better, more complete experience. I've put over 200 hours into Everybody's Golf.
It's for everybody, not just Mario.
It's true. Now, like, if you want that whimsical style, like with the Mario characters, I put this criticism online. Some people are like, but Everybody's Golf's just generic. This has Mario characters and funny clothes. I guess then that floats your boat. But yeah, so it's a good golf game, but it's not the best. I'm curious to see how Nintendo does updates for it.
Yeah, also, you get trophies if you play Everyone's Golf on your PlayStation consoles, and you do not get trophies if you play Mario Golf.
Don't get me started on those trophies.
Oh, you mean those achievement ripoffs?
Fuck everybody's golf trophies. That's all I'm going to say.
I will say, without even having ever looked at the trophy list for everyone's golf, I can imagine the trophy list for that game being real hard.
There's one trophy which requires you to unlock all the secret characters that are in the game, or secret challengers. And to get one of the challengers to be able to play them, you have to get three hole-in-ones on par fives, which is the furthest distance. And there's one course that maybe you can do it in one hole that you can potentially do it. Whenever you go online, I don't know if it's still like that because the community is very low now. But when you go online, they'd be at this one hole, and basically you had to shoot it across the river, hope your ball bounces off the water, goes over this hut, and then rolls into the hole to be able to get that. And you had to repeat that 3 times.
Man.
To be able to do it. The platinum on that game, I think it's probably like 1%, but it's stupid. And you just have people at this hole who would be constantly knocking their balls across, and then like running over with their golf carts, because you could then go into golf cart and zoom over there, and then hope like. Yeah, it was just a nightmare.
I do
Anyways.
Want to just get back to something you were mentioning earlier. You said repeatedly over and over, at least for now, you should check out Everyone's Golf on the PlayStation over Mario Golf. Like, based on the way that you phrase that, it suggests that you believe that Nintendo's going to improve Mario Golf over time. Do you think that eventually Mario Golf will be at a place where you can say, like, oh man, this one is totally a contender for the best golf game out there, better or at least on the same level as Everyone's Golf?
No, probably not. I think so. Here's the deal: you can buy Everybody's Golf when Everybody's Golf launched. I think it was like 50 Canadian, 40 US. Budget pricing, but it was the right price for the right title. Now you can buy for like $26.99, where you're going to pay 79 Canadian for Mario Golf. So like right now, that's your better bang for your buck. If you're looking for a good golf game, and that's where I'd suggest you go at the current moment. We'll see if and I'm not saying it's bad. I'm enjoying my time with Mario Golf. But I don't know if it's an 80. We talk a lot about whether is this worth $80. That's become a big talking point, and I don't think it is. So I think Nintendo's very much sticking to their all of our stuff are like super strong games, and we'll just continue to sell them at full price all the time. This really should have been like a lower price title. So, and like. There's a very vague, here's our roadmap by just saying we're going to do free updates and showing the new Donk City course, which kind of looks terrible because it kind of looks like you have to bounce the ball off the buildings through the city, and that doesn't sound good at all.
That sounds unique and kind of interesting.
I just would have liked to see, like, here's our roadmap. We've got 3 new courses coming. We've got 2 new characters.
Sure. Yeah.
So
this is like, I don't know how either of you will feel about this, but looking at the game and, listening and reading how people have described it thus far, like, I almost wonder if the game would have worked as like a free-to-play title, like strip down the version that we got, a little bit more, and then release that as a free-to-play title, and then, piecemeal out the rest of its content.
It could be interesting. I don't know if the characters play differently enough to warrant buying multiple characters. Maybe they do. Well, they've all had different things. Like that's an interesting thought process.
That hasn't stopped other free-to-play games in the past from, pulling similar stuff.
No, completely fair. It would be an interesting strategy for Nintendo to try. I think the biggest takeaway here is that Camelot's been doing all of Nintendo's sports games in the last, and like they've been doing them forever, whether it's Mario Tennis or Mario Golf, or I think they did Strikers. I could be wrong on that. And it might be time to start holding them to a higher level of quality, because both those tennis games, now the Switch tennis game, Aces, is that right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, Aces was on Switch. It was a different one on the Wii U. Were like Aces was better than the Wii U game because the Wii U game was critically panned. But just overall, like the main criticism, and I haven't played the 3DS version, is that this is missing a ton of features that the 3DS version had, and it's like they went next gen and then forgot to bring half of the stuff with it. So, like tournaments and like there were 10 courses in the base 3DS game, and there's 6 courses in the Switch game. So that's where I think a lot of other Mitch and TJ and I were talking about that during the stream, but like maybe people who are scoring this quite a bit lower too have played the 3DS version and know what they had in prior games, and that's just not here this time.
Yeah.
So
before we move on, just a quick little update. So Camelot is indeed the developer that's been behind like most of, if not all of the prior Mario Golf games, Mario Tennis games, and so on and so forth. Next Level Games, the developer behind Luigi's Mansion, Dark Moon, Luigi's Mansion 3, and other games, was the developer behind Super Mario Strikers and Strikers Charged.
Oh, okay, cool. Good. All right, well, that answers that question. Also, a fun side note is that Camelot actually made the first Everybody's Golf. And then Nintendo got them to start doing the sports games. Then and I guess it would have been Hot Shots 2 or Everybody's Golf 2. At that point, Clap Hands took over and turned it into what it is now.
Wow, what a weird origin story for that franchise.
So, yes, that they're like direct competition is the people who made it. So yeah, we're running a little on in our what we've been talking about. We've been going a little bit here. I'm going to save. I've been playing Miles Morales, but I'm going to save that to next week. Kozi, do you want to do a quick update on FF7?
Yeah, sure. Just a real super duper quick update. I beat Final Fantasy VII episode Intermission. It was real satisfying, and the conclusion of the episode provided me with a very lengthy and satisfying cutscene that I think sets things up very, very well for the next mainline episode of the Final Fantasy VII saga, while still, keeping many questions in the air. It's going to be a good-ass time, and I am looking forward to it.
Great. No, that's good. I'm looking forward to Final Fantasy VII Episode 2 Intercourse.
Intercourse? So. I've not heard that one before.
AJ, you had some various random games here. Anything specific you want to call out?
One thing I'll call out is I spent a good chunk of last weekend at Rachel's, and while she was busy sleeping, I decided to turn my phone on and through the Game Pass app, get the final achievement in Outriders.
Oh, sweet!
So that means I've
you platinumed it.
Platinumed it. I've got the final Xbox achievement for it. I think what we should do, just as an overall thing, if you get every achievement, you get an S rank.
An S rank. I was going to say this is a problem, and Xbox needs to have something like this to say you have all the achievements, because it's really easy to say you got the platinum, and everybody
really
knows.
It really is.
Everybody knows what it is, and it's kind of nice to get that platinum trophy, like as that final little bit. And it'd be nice if Xbox had like an equivalent thing.
Yeah, it's just it's like the cherry on top.
Yeah.
They took the achievement thing, right, which was trophies were absolutely an afterthought for PlayStation, but then they took it and then they made it their own, and they did that, and that's great, good for them. But yeah, I got the last one in Outriders, so by the sounds of the subreddit, it sounds like that game might be good again.
Okay. Well, they'd done some nerf, and there were some tech issues with it, right? Connection issues.
Tech issues. They did some nerfing that a lot of people didn't like.
Yeah.
And they're liking the current changes in the subreddit, so I don't know. It might be good again, but I've got all the achievements, so why would I keep playing?
Well, congratulations.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, let's then segue into our topic of the show. So we don't discuss a lot of news anymore, but I thought this would be interesting. So it was announced yesterday that Sony has acquired Housemarque, a studio that they've had a long relationship with. Like pretty much almost all Housemarque games have come out on PlayStation almost exclusively. There's one or two that have gone multi-platform, but I'd probably say
Yeah.
like 90% of the catalog has been PlayStation.
We
games.
should specify this is like since the year 2007 when they released Super Stardust HD, because prior to that
Yeah.
they were primarily like a PC centric developer.
Okay. Yeah, no, 100%. So for like the past like 15 years,
Yeah, basically.
they've been primarily on PlayStation with one or two things outside of that. And this is Housemarque is a company that a lot of people hold near and dear because of their arcade roots. Like I still think Resogun is one of the best PS4 games that has come out on that system, and it was a launch title. But that being said, they had to stop making arcade games, and they put out a blog post years ago saying that arcade is dead and business will not, like, people aren't buying the games and they can't continue to make them. So it left them in an interesting position where they had to do other things to be able to, and they were working on a battle royale, I believe, of some sort, that got put on the back burner.
Was yeah, I never mind.
Storm something? I can't remember.
I'm trying to do real-time information myself so I can help back up what you're saying, but turns out Housemarque's Wikipedia page, not very super in detail. If anybody is responsible for editing the Wikipedia pages of PlayStation's first-party studios, better get onto it.
Storm Divers. It was called Storm Divers.
There we go.
I was like, I knew it had Storm, and it's a battle royale game, and it's still not launched. They've put that on the back burner because Sony created the relationship for them to develop Returnal, which I think has panned out well. Returnal has been very positively received. For the most part, there's definitely one or two sticking points and issues that, like no internal save system.
Yeah,
but it's turned out well, and so Sony's finally decided to purchase Housemarque, which I'm sure has been a long time standing. In fact, if you go back 10 years listening to podcasts, or maybe 7 or 8 years after Resogun came out, you'd probably hear that most pundits on podcasts saying, well, Sony is going to buy Housemarque, like 10 years ago. So it's a surprise to see it come so late, because they had their independence and they wanted their independence, but this puts them in an interesting position where now they have been purchased and are financially set to be able to create what they want to create, and they don't have to worry about that. But then that brought me thinking, like, we've seen a ton of consolidation within the industry, whether it be Microsoft. Microsoft's made huge studio acquisitions. Then we've seen reverse acquisitions, like Square buying IO Interactive, the creators of Hitman, and then letting them go and be their own thing again. So, which is an interesting bit too, like piece to this puzzle as well. So I was curious what your guys' thoughts were on this, like, arms race almost. And like, so the rumor is, by the way, that not only are they acquiring Housemarque, but Sony Japan accidentally tweeted a picture with their congratulating Housemarque on being bought. But in the picture, it said that it was Sony, and then it had the Blue Point logo. So the current theory is that they are also buying Blue Point, and it hasn't been announced yet. So, and then, so anyways, I was curious of your guys' thoughts on these acquisitions. Like, we see other, and it's not just Sony and Microsoft. We see Nintendo occasionally. It's not as often, but they do invest. Did they not buy the Luigi's Mansion developer?
Yes, they
Next Level.
Yep, they purchased Next Level Games last year, I believe.
Yes, last year. So that's still pretty recent. And we've seen EA and less so Activision, but we've seen EA do the same thing and bring other publishers on. And I was curious what your guys' thoughts are, and what does this mean for the industry? And is it good for the, like, developers / publishers? Because there's pros and cons to this.
Jumping off the Nintendo stuff, it's interesting. Like, I don't know if we can take Nintendo's acquisition of Next Level Games as being a trend, because previously, I believe that the last developer that Nintendo purchased was Monolith Software in 2007, I want to say. Basically a real long time ago. But that's not to say that it's not a trend either. It's interesting. Right here, I have pulled up on IGN an article from many years ago that I remembered. This is an article titled "Always Independent: The Story of Insomniac Games," and basically it's written by IGN's Colin Moriarty at the time, going through and talking about the history of the storied first-party PlayStation developer, and like. I feel like during the previous console generation, during the late Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 era, early PS4, Xbox One era, like the story very much was like, yeah, like we're independent and we're proud that we're independent because we appreciate the flexibility that it grants us. We appreciate being able to, schlep over to the 360 and release a game there. We appreciate being able to schlep over to the PlayStation ecosystem, release a game there. Independence is great. And it's funny how over the course of the past few years, like I feel like, not to say that the narrative is completely reversed, but like I feel like there's been a kind of heavy dose of reality that's been injected into all of this, where you see so many developers now be like, yeah, independence is great, but we can't afford to, be independent and also produce games of the same level that we want to make as well. And I think that, right off the front, that's, an important thing to point out in talking about these acquisitions, which is that, by Insomniac being purchased by Sony, by Double Fine being purchased by Microsoft, these studios are able to kind of continue to kind of really give it their all and theoretically make games, of the same level of quality that they've been making all these years, if not greater, without the kind of worry or stressing out about, oh man, are we about to end up on the chopping block if things don't totally pan out? Because we have Microsoft's pockets that we can now reach into, helping keep us afloat.
Well, yeah, and sorry, AJ, we'll come to you in 2 seconds. But when you bring up Microsoft, and the developer that just jumps out right out when you say that is Double Fine, because Double Fine has put out really interesting independent games, but have the sales been where they wanted to? Did Brutal, I don't think anything they've made has been a sales success. They've had great luck with Kickstarter, and that's how they got the name of it's slipping my head. It's the point and click adventure game.
I know what you're talking about. Sorry?
Broken Age.
Broken Age. Thank you. Yes. Part 1 and part 2, but that was even to a point where they needed a long time to finish part 2. Excellent game, by the way. If you haven't played Broken Age is a great game to go play. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But being bought by Microsoft, they love their independence, and Tim Schafer has been on the record saying that being bought by Microsoft has taken the worries about how are they going to get their next paycheck, and they've been able to focus on creating games. And I'm curious to see what that looks like when Psychonauts 2 comes out in August, which is something they've been working on. So AJ, sorry, you go ahead.
One more anecdote in that exact same vein. If you go back to episode 26, when my friend Ben was on, he mentioned specifically the reason why Airborne Kingdom went when it with its PC release in December went exclusive to the Epic Game Store was for that exact same reason. Epic approached them and basically said, "Hey, listen, take all the time you need, make it good, and we'll just." They basically just funded the game, and all they wanted was exclusivity, right? So that's what they did. They went with that, and they were able to launch Airborne Kingdom successfully because of it. They probably would have still done just fine on Steam. They probably would have hit an even bigger audience on Steam. But the priority, it's not from a developer standpoint, it's not about, wanting a payout and being greedy. No, it's about wanting your basic human needs met first, and then you get to do the thing you want to do. So. Yeah,
100%. And there's a negative side to this too, and we've seen this. I'm trying to think of who bad examples are of who do purchases.
Bethesda, from the perspective of it really limiting where people can play Bethesda's games.
Yeah, I guess let's talk about the Bethesda acquisition, because and So I'm now have all consoles and I can play games anywhere. So this does not affect me as much as it did when this first came out. But to me, I find the relationship that Sony takes with its studios before they purchases them, because they seem to really build a relationship and work with them a bunch before they make those purchases. Whether that's Insomniac or Naughty Dog or Media Molecule, when they make these acquisitions, they have worked with these studios. It's not just out of nowhere. And Bethesda seemed like we're buying it just to beef up our catalog, while there was a history with Microsoft and Bethesda, 100%, like when you're looking at Oblivion being a console exclusive, they've been multi-platform for 10-15 years on all systems. And I guess it does. There's still a lot of hurt fanboys about it who aren't going to be able to play games. And we talked about the Pete Hines apology 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, played it live on air. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So,
I would recommend listening to the most recent episode of IGN's podcast Unlocked with Phil Spencer.
Oh, I haven't listened to that yet. I'm going to put that on my list.
Ryan McCaffrey, Destin Legary, and
Miranda Sanchez,
I believe. They're talking to Phil Spencer, and they ask him kind of all these questions. Now, back in January, the CEO of Bethesda passed away. I forget his name.
And
they were in talk. We may not have seen the relationship between
Robert
Xbox
Altman,
and Bethesda.
by the way.
Yeah. We may not have seen necessarily the relationship between Xbox and Bethesda, the corporations on the outside, like we do PlayStation and their some of their studios. But Phil talks about the relationship that they had personally with the people who ran these companies, and what would be, what each other's vision was, and what they wanted from whatever this may be. One negative thing that I would kind of like to relate it to, there was a Reddit post that I saw. It was posted over a year ago at this point. And the title is 11 companies that own nearly every product in the grocery store. Right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna copy this image, Kozi, and I'm gonna put it in the podcast chat.
Coke and Pepsi are up there.
Yeah. And it's actually kind of mind-blowing. And when people say negative things about acquisitions, this is kind of what makes it kind of worrisome in a way. For example, there's 11 companies around that outside circle. Pull your car over if you're listening to this, pull up the YouTube video and take a look at this graphic at this time mark here.
You probably weren't driving anywhere important anyways.
You were probably not. Yeah. No, whatever. But yeah, there are 11 companies that basically own everything, right? And who would have thought Kraft and Heinz are the same company?
I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, little things like that.
Yeah.
And the fact that
none of these are surprising to me beyond that, and their wide, vast ownership. But it's just when you see this it really puts it in perspective.
It really does put it in perspective. So if you imagine that outer ring is like platform holders, right? And then inside there would be the developers that they have. It can be worrisome, because at what point do we draw the line here and say that, hey, you know what, there might be a bit of a monopoly?
talking
right?
about it
Yeah.
also like more in terms of practical terms, in terms of like how this can materially affect the games that we play. You fear that you might end up in a Ubisoft style situation where there was a period of time where it felt like every single Ubisoft game was cut and paste the same, jump up the tower, scan your environment around you, collect the things, do this and that open world style game. And you do kind of look at Microsoft, for example, and you wonder like, oh man, are we going to see a lot of the design of Microsoft's many games across many studios it now owns be very kind of consolidated? In Sony, for example, we've talked a lot about how as of recent, a lot of Sony games tend to follow the template of all being these very glossy third-person action adventure games, be it Uncharted, be it Days Gone, be it The Last of Us, be it so on and so forth. So much so that there was that article that came out from Jason Schreier where he was talking about how the many studios within Sony are kind of buckling from that. So yeah, I think that's something else to kind of factor into this conversation as well.
Well, and then you get like, so we've talked about like it when their purchases, it like may deprive certain people of, because they just don't have those consoles to be able to play those games. But from like, there is, when you get bought, potential of losing your freedom too, because it's nice having that freedom to be able to make whatever game you want.
Look at EA.
Yeah.
And the other smaller companies that they've bought and just dismantled.
Yeah, or Activision. And how they're doing Call of Duty support.
Yeah,
or like, Blizzard support.
Exactly, right? So
I look at something like Tony Hawk Underground or Tony Hawk Remake 1-2, and
why is there no 3 yet? Come on.
Yeah, well, because they're working on Diablo 2 Resurrected.
Yeah,
and under they're officially under the Blizzard umbrella now. Which makes me like they moved them over to Blizzard, and that's where I was just checking their Wikipedia page, and it actually says they are part of Blizzard Games now. So they've moved them over there. But like, you lose freedom on what you want to do, and there's a chance where you could just become a support studio.
Yeah.
Not doing what you want to be doing at all.
And these scenarios that you're describing don't seem to have happened as commonly at Microsoft and Sony studios, but you do have stuff like, for example, in the Jason Schreier Bloomberg article, him talking about how the developer behind Days Gone, Sony Bend, was kind of pushed to work on Naughty Dog related projects, and thankfully they were able to kind of escape that and are now working on their own thing. But there was a brief period of time where it seems like they could have just become a satellite studio for the Santa Monica powerhouse, and that would have been too bad.
Well, and there was talk, like I think in that Schreier article, they were joking how they were like Naughty Dog South or something, or
Naughty Dog. They
East.
would be Naughty Dog North, because Oregon is definitely north of California.
Yeah, that's probably completely correct. I don't know my American geography, but that 100% checks out.
West Coast, West Coast.
Yeah. Fun fact: Hawaii, like way more in the south than you would think it would be. I feel like a lot of maps, you look at Hawaii and it looks like it's more or less parallel with the other states of the United States, but it's actually way more in the south.
So, and like, look, like when we talk Sony too and what we've seen, but I think like when you look at Sony and what they've let Media Molecule do, they get a ton of freedom. Because like Media Molecule has been working on Dreams for how long now?
A long time.
So, yeah, like they've been working on Dreams, and they're apparently doing something where they've started making another game in Dreams, and they're going to let people finish it from the Dreams community. So
I've not paid particularly close attention to Dream since I purchased it on a lark last year and played around a little bit with it. My understanding is that they've released another like game of the same caliber and size as Artstream. Correct?
I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. Actually, I'm in a very similar position to you are.
They're making fresh new content and polished content for that platform, but I'm not. I can't speak authoritatively on what they're doing.
I know there's a lot of really interesting stuff in Dreams that's available to play. And really, Kozi, you and I should do a deep dive into Dreams one day for an episode.
Sure. I mean, like I said, I've not played it a lot recently, but I'd be more than happy to talk about it.
All I'm saying is that maybe we have a week where we just play a bunch of games in Dreams based on recommendations, then come back and talk about them.
Yeah, I mean,
and where we think the state of Dreams is.
I'm guilty admitting it, but during the early days of Dreams, I will admit that I spent a lot of time just searching up like Mario, Sonic, The Legend of Zelda, all the like popular IP, and seeing what people had created. Some of their creations not that bad. I still see posts on like Kotaku and the like nowadays talking about this like one Sonic mod they've been working on in Dreams that's apparently pretty good.
So I know there's Dreams Awards, the Dreamies, I believe,
yes, that
they gave out. Yeah. So maybe we look at and play like the top, like the 6 games that were up for Game of the Year in the Dreamies, because those should be the best of the best in the community. Just an interesting topic point for us to come back to down the line.
For sure.
Anyways, so side tangent off. So we're talking about like the good, the bad. So we talked about how they get their they're financially not independent, but don't have to worry about finances anymore when they're being bought, and that's a huge positive. And the studio heads have come out and said that making games is more expensive than it used to be, and I think there is a workload balance between what people want from a AAA game now and what they get from an indie game, although that is starting to blur, I think, a little bit again. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Because there are different expectations in what you're going to get out of like let's talk Biomutant, which was, I think, made by a small team of 20 people.
Yeah.
And I believe they are not owned by THQ Nordic, but THQ Nordic published the game.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Correct.
So, Experiment 101, is that the name of them?
Yeah, Experiment 101, which does not have their own Wikipedia page, so you know that they're pretty small and obscure.
So they created a pretty tiny, like a pretty big game, but it was developed by 20 people, but it was kind of torn apart when it was released. So would they be better under an umbrella? Because like there's 2 ways I think about something like Biomutant, where number one, if they don't have to worry about the numbers a little bit, they can wait longer to release it, potentially, depending upon the publisher's calendar, maybe. But number 2, they can get a little more guidance in the game development, because that's something that I think the collaboration aspects, which we haven't talked about, like with Sony specifically, because the Sony studios talk to each other a lot when they're doing their development. I assume Microsoft's probably going to be getting to that, but I don't know if they have that same familiarity. But I know the Sony projects talk a lot when they're creating games and try and figure everything out.
Yeah, it's funny. The moment you talked about, collaboration and how that can really help these experiences, I don't know why, but my mind actually went to an example of how collaboration can go awry, and specifically something like BioWare within EA, and how because BioWare was purchased by EA, the studio was kind of, I don't want to say pushed, but convinced to adopt the Frostbite engine for its games post Dragon Age 2, and that didn't exactly prove as beneficial to all the parties involved as they think they wanted it to be, to put it mildly. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know if that's necessary collaboration, though. I think that's an edict from EA telling them that they have to use this engine.
I did a video essay on the development of Dragon Age 3 a while ago. It was more it was more collaborative, actually, than a lot of people.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Well, it was kind of a thing where like they wanted to really update the engine for the Dragon Age series following Dragon Age 2, because it was just really like old and decrepit and like built on code bases from years and years ago. And EA was like, hey, you guys want to update your thing? We have this developer over in Sweden working on this engine that we think might work out. And it was only kind of after the fact that they realized like, this is not as great going as we thought it was going to be.
Okay. Once again, refer to episode 26.
Yeah.
the interview with Ben. I was just watching that randomly the other day. He goes into detail about his work on Frostbite and some of the challenges he faced doing that with regards to Dragon Age Inquisition.
That's completely fair. I actually, now that you brought that up, I do remember that.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of developers struggled using the Frostbite engine, because I know, like, it was like the catch-all multi-purpose game, like so much so that their engine that they even used in the PGA Tour game that came out,
Yeah.
which maybe wasn't the right fit for that. But EA wanted to consolidate all in one engine, and they didn't want to pay fees for Unreal or
it was a game engine that was designed to be for first person shooters essentially, and like if I remember correctly, Ben was saying something along the lines of like when he got his hands on it, there were still parts like you still had to drop in first person and move some things around that way. Like yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare, but you know, they made it work, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
100%. So I guess, like, where do we fall on the consolidation? Because really, that's like, we've talked about the positives, we've talked about the negatives, and they're on both sides of the aisle. We've seen cases where it's great, and we've seen cases where it's terrible. What do you guys think of this? I know, AJ, you were just talking about the worry about monopolizing the industry. Is that where you kind of stand with it?
No. Actually, oddly enough, I kind of fall onto the opposite side of it, because I've only seen kind of good, at this point, in terms of video games and stuff, only good things come from that. For the things like the EA buying up and Activision buying things up and just dismantling them aside, it's, for me, I consider it an investment in the people to be able to do what they were trained to do. And you're not just going to find that money from anywhere. The money has to come from somewhere if these people are going to be able to do the thing that they want to do. And so it's a really good, it's just a good investment, and not in like the corporate sense, but I'm looking at the value that even investment in our own infrastructure in the world, whether it be roads and water lines and stuff like that, how much that matters. So that's the place that I see it. It's that sort of investment, not like an investment where, oh, I'm going to make money from this. No, it's an investment because I want to make the thing I want to make.
Yeah, 100%. I'm kind of on the theory where it depends upon what those studios' needs are. And if they can continue to be independent and they're making enough money, 100%. But if it's stifling their creativity and they can't make it, or they're not going to survive, or they think it's a partnership that's beneficial to them, then go for it. But I think it's case by case.
And when it comes to platform-specific purchases like that, I don't know how big of a difference it makes, but having to only focus on one platform, you can just put all of your resources into that instead of having to split it, like we saw in like the early 360 PS3 generation, where Xbox was in the lead at that point. Yes, but even on the developer side, because it was so much easier to develop for, the 360 became the lead platform on pretty much every single multi-platform game, right? So as a result, that just sort of ended up making the Xbox version better in that generation.
Yep.
For the most part. My experience with that was things like Oblivion, where the load times were atrocious on PS3, and really good on Xbox, or Mass Effect 2 when that came out. The lighting was just so completely different between the two platforms. So
Yeah. Well, no, and 100%. And actually, that's a valid point, which we didn't even talk about. Like just being able to develop for one system. I mean, look what Naughty Dog has done with the PS4. And what some of the first party titles they've been what they've been able to do out of that system, because it's the only system they're developing for. Where you don't get that same consistency potentially out of something that's multi-console for what you just mentioned, AJ. They're splitting resources and having to dedicate, and especially when you talk that PS3 360 area with the cell infrastructure and the x86 infrastructure and how different they were at the time to develop for. You're splitting your resources, where if you've only got the one place you're developing for, it is going to make everything
look at something
better.
like the original Uncharted trilogy. They only had to focus on PS3.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? So they could learn that they learned that more complicated system, and then those games are still gorgeous, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I believe last year I talked about how I went back and played the PlayStation 3 version of the original The Last of Us in the lead up to the release of The Last of Us Part 2. And that game still looks real great on the PlayStation 3, even after all these years. A little dated in certain areas, but still amazing, because Naughty Dog was able to, work up the console's ladder in that sense.
Well, and even you've seen that, the example I always bring up too is at the end of the PS2 life cycle, when the PS3 had launched, God of War 2 came out on the PS2. And it was getting every single piece of thing it could out of the PS2. But once again, that was a first party game that they had all the time in the world to learn how to develop for that system and learn its intricacies. So yeah, that familiarity is going to and I think Pete Hines, what show was I listening to? It was I think it was the Xcast actually on Kind of Funny. And they had Pete Hines and somebody else from Microsoft.
Adam something?
Master
no, it's
Chief.
not Adam.
Yep.
It was Master Chief, 100%.
Fusion Frenzy himself.
Aaron Greenberg.
That's it.
I was close. I had the A.
Yeah, and they were just talking about how beneficial this was going to be for them. And how it is going to make things easier, and you're going to see better products out of it because they only have to design for one system. Although I do kind of have to wonder, because obviously games that were in development for both systems, and how much they dropped was just wasted potential. Because I think
in 20 years we'll see a leaked build of that version something.
Yeah, because there is a PS4 or PS5 version of Star. I'm blanking on it. Starfield. There is that somewhere. They were obviously working on it before this buyout. So, and now that's just in the garbage.
I do want to say, to kind of state my opinion on the matter. I think, everything that you've said about the kind of positive effects of these acquisitions is true. I think that, you can there's definitely a lot to be gained both financially and design wise from getting acquired by some of these bigger companies. But I guess when it comes down to it, I just wish that we were living in a reality where I feel like developers felt like they had a little bit more choice. It strikes me that we're living in a world where you basically don't kind of have any choice now in the matter with regards to your independence. And I remember, again, during the early 2010s, during the late 360, PlayStation 3 era, early PS4, Xbox One era, where it really felt like you could kind of be whatever kind of developer you wanted to be. You could be independent, or you could be acquired. You could kind of make whatever you wanted to work with you. During that era, you saw Kickstarters, run aplenty. We talked about that a little bit earlier. We saw Double Fine make huge buck off of a Kickstarter campaign that led to the creation of Broken Age. We saw Obsidian lead a huge Kickstarter campaign that led to the creation of Pillars of Eternity 1. And fast forward, a console generation later, both those developers are like, yeah, that was all fun, but we just can't live off of that model anymore. Now we have to be acquired. And again, I think that both those developers are probably destined to still create great games, and hopefully not be too creatively limited by Microsoft over the course of the next several years. But it's too bad that it seems like they kind of found themselves in a rut where like being acquired was their only recourse. But maybe I'm mischaracterizing it. Ultimately, I can't claim to speak for any of these development studios. You have to imagine that there are some that are totally very enthusiastic about the prospect of being acquired by some of these developers. And so, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think that's a fitting endpoint. Like, I think we've all talked about where we stand. And like that, it's probably good. But I think there is worry in what does this make the game industry look like in a while, and does this continue to cause studios to buy? Like, is Microsoft going to continue on a buying spree and purchasing studios? I would like to think that they're slowing down or slowed down for now, because part of what made Sony's first party so strong is that they kind of like developed and mentored these studios. Naughty Dog wasn't Naughty Dog over like one night. It took games to get them there and working with them and getting them to the studios that they became. And Microsoft now has to do that as well with all their recent acquisitions. So,
yep.
AJ, your thoughts?
I think honestly, like when it comes to like Microsoft buying stuff,
I
think they've done a good job since Phil Spencer took over. Yes, it hurts potential PlayStation players, but they've done a very good job at turning the ship right around and becoming the more consumer friendly option.
Yep. And
the most consumer friendly option is right now is Game Pass. And if more acquisitions mean that I don't have to shell out $90 for something I may or may not like, then great. I'm absolutely all for it.
I want to apologize because for a second I thought you were queuing up into a joke, AJ.
Nope, not this time.
Okay, not this time.
Not this time.
All right.
Nathan seems very confused. There was a viral joke on Twitter where people were basically talking about how like, oh man, it's totally insane that people think that we're advertising for Xbox Game Pass for free, but not as insane as the value prospect of Xbox Game Pass. And I thought AJ was about to do the same thing.
I was thinking about it, but it's not the vaccine hitting me yet, but it's waking up at 5 a.m. and going to work. It's hitting me now. So,
friend of the show, Mr. Badbit, Joe from the Trophy Room, was actually quoted one of those in a Kotaku article.
That's right.
That he did.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Now that you think about it, is that the true purpose of the vaccines? Is it to get us all talking about Xbox Game Pass? I mean, think about it. You compare the Venn diagram of people that have been vaccinated to people on Twitter talking about Xbox Game Pass, and you got yourself a pretty perfect circle right there.
That's fair.
The plot thickens.
Okay, so I feel like we've run the course of this episode. So why don't we, do you guys have any other final thoughts?
No. I will say selfishly that I do hope that Nintendo continues to work together with Mercury Steam, because they did pretty good stuff with Metroid Samus Returns, and it seems like they're going to go on to do great stuff with Metroid Dread, and I hope that they continue to make good stuff together, but I don't want to impede on what Mercury Steam wants to do next.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, thank you for tuning into this episode of Press YYZ. If you enjoyed what you just heard, be sure to share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and follow us on Twitch. You can check us out at Press YYZ on Twitter to stay up to date with when we go live, and join us in Discord at invite.gg/Press YYZ to keep the conversation going. We'd love to have you there. Next week's topic is TBD. That's the disease from Arrested Development, right? That they were raising money for, TBD.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
fine. You got it.
Yeah. So we're going to be discussing that disease. Until then, thank you for playing.